total chaos. My husband came home and started punching my affair partner while he stood and screamed, "Hey Reddit, genuinely never thought I'd be posting this. But I think that's what everyone says. This is not my first time using Reddit, but it has actually been a while. My name is Sarah and I am 28 years old. My husband's name is Mark and he is 27. I'm posting this on here because I need some advice on how to navigate the situation that I am currently in. I genuinely do not know how to go about it. I was having an affair while married to my husband and it has blown up all in my face. My husband and I have been married for about 2 years now. It was good in the beginning. We don't have any kids as we are planning to wait till we are in our 30s before we start having kids. My husband owns a good job in a nice tech company, and I am an influencer, or at least an aspiring one. Things were great with my husband in the beginning. We met on a dating site. I genuinely thought it would amount to nothing in the beginning because dating sites do not have much of a good reputation. But we went for one date and then another, and we realized that we really liked each other. It was smooth sailing since then, until we got married. My husband kind of changed. He didn't do the things that he used to do before. I have always known my husband as someone who kind of nags. We've been together for a long time. We met on a dating app like I've mentioned before, back in college. My husband has always had this nagging tendency, but it never bothered me this much until recently. Back in college, I was never the typical academic type. I knew deep down that academia wasn't my forte, and I had my eyes set on a different path, becoming an influencer. It was my dream, my passion. When I shared this with my husband, he initially seemed supportive, but there was always this little seed of doubt. He would warn me about the challenges of being an influencer. He would talk about the hard work it required. It felt like he didn't fully believe in my capabilities. Despite knowing my aspirations, he would constantly nag me about attending classes, completing projects, and staying on top of my assignments. He would say it was for my own good, pushing me to excel academically. I remember jokingly telling him that if he wanted my projects done, he should do them himself. Of course, that was met with a logical response by him about how the purpose of education was for me to learn, and him doing my projects for me would defeat that purpose. Another area where we didn't agree was finances. Whenever I spent a bit more than what we had agreed upon, he would nag me about it, even if it was just a minor overspend. It felt suffocating at times, especially since I saw us as partners who should trust each other's judgment. After college, the nagging from my husband got even worse, especially about finding a job. It became a constant argument between us. He really wanted me to start working right away, but I was dead set on focusing solely on my influencer dream. To me, that was my passion, my calling, and I didn't want anything to distract me from going after it with everything I had. He suggested I get a part-time job to help with the bills, but I flat out refused. I believed that as a man, it was his job to handle the finances. I stuck to my guns. I was convinced that my influencer career would take off soon and I wouldn't need a job for money. But he kept warning me about the uncertainties of being an influencer. He said if things didn't work out as quickly as I hoped, I'd have to get a job to support us. I kind of agreed at the time because I thought my influencer gig would blow up before long. Looking back, I see now that I might have underestimated how tough it is to make it as an influencer. It's a crazy competitive world, and success doesn't just fall into your lap. This gap between what I expected and what actually happened started causing some serious friction between us. When it came to planning our wedding, it was another area where we didn't see eye to eye. I had always dreamed of a big, fancy wedding since I was a little girl. I shared this dream with my husband early on, and he seemed okay with it. But as we started planning, my husband dropped a bomb. He said he wanted to save money for our future and suggested a smaller, more budget-friendly wedding. That hit me hard because I had always pictured something more extravagant. He suggested that if I really wanted a big wedding, I should pitch in for the extra costs. The problem was I didn't have as much money as he did. His family was well off, but mine wasn't. I tried to explain this, but he didn't want to ask his parents for more money, especially since they had already bought us a house. However, the house was only in his name, which also bothered me a lot. In the end, we compromised and had a mid-sized wedding. It wasn't what I had dreamed of, but I tried to make the best of it, even though I felt a bit let down. We also had some serious disagreements about who should do what around the house and how we handle our money. My husband believed that because he was the one paying most of the bills, I should handle most of the household chores since I was home during the day. I tried to suggest splitting the chores more equally, with him taking on a bit more than me, maybe with him taking on about 60% and me taking on about 40%. But he wasn't having it. He insisted that if I wanted him to do more around the house, I should contribute equally to the bills. It felt pretty unfair, but I ended up agreeing just to keep the peace. This arrangement really got to me. I was already busy trying to build my influencer career, and adding more chores to my plate felt overwhelming. I even brought up hiring a maid to help out, but he shot that idea down fast. He said it didn't make sense to hire someone when I was home all day. Dealing with all of this made me feel stressed and underappreciated, and it definitely put a strain on our relationship. As my frustration, anger, and resentment towards my husband grew, I started feeling like he didn't value or appreciate me. It was like my efforts at home and my dreams didn't matter to him, and that really got to me. He didn't acknowledge or understand it. This feeling of being ignored or taken for granted made me really upset. This constant feeling of being taken for granted took a huge toll on me emotionally. That's when I met Ray. It was just a regular day, and I went to the store to pick up a few things. I usually use delivery services, but that day I decided to go myself. While I was there, I bumped into Ray. He was friendly and struck up a chat with me. At first, I was kind of standoffish because I was in a hurry, but Ray kept the conversation going. We talked about random stuff, joked around, and even talked about what we were buying. When it was time to check out, Ray surprised me by offering to pay for my groceries. I declined at first, feeling it was too much, especially since I was married. He then told me he had noticed my wedding ring but assured me that his intention was purely friendly and that he respected my relationship. Despite my reservations, I ended up giving him my number when he asked for it, because I rationalized it as harmless friendliness. I gave him my number even though I knew I probably shouldn't have. Looking back, I see it was a mistake, but at that moment I was looking for some kind of connection or appreciation that I wasn't getting at home. As I started talking to Ray more frequently, I tried to keep things casual and not let our conversations get too deep. I was cautious not to lead him on or give him the wrong impression, especially since I knew it wasn't right to be forming such a close friendship with another man while married. However, as time went on, Ray's charm and wit started to break down my initial barriers. We began to chat more regularly, and before I knew it, he became someone I looked forward to talking to every day. He had a way of making me laugh and forget about the stress of my daily life. I found myself spending more and more time chatting with him, sometimes to the point where I neglected my household chores or didn't focus on my influencer work as much. My husband Mark began to notice the change in my behavior. He commented on how I seemed happier and smiled more when I was on my phone. He asked about it teasingly, probably not expecting a serious answer. In response, I brushed it off casually, telling him I was just browsing funny videos on Instagram. It was a harmless lie, or so I thought at the time. I didn't mention Ray or the depth of my conversations with him. Looking back, I realize I should have been honest with Mark from the start about my friendship with Ray, but I didn't, and that decision would later come back to haunt me. As Ray and I continued to chat, he gradually broke down my initial reservations, and I found myself letting him into my life more and more. One day, he casually suggested that we go out together. I had told him previously that it had been a while since I had gone out as I was a homebody and didn't really have any friends. Ray then randomly reminded me one day how it had been a while since I had gone out anywhere and joked that he could be my first friend now and that we could go out together. Initially, I hesitated because I felt it might be inappropriate given our friendship's nature, but then I reasoned that it was the 21st century, and there was nothing bad or wrong with going out with a male friend. After all, it was just a friendly outing, or so I told myself. So we started hanging out. I have to admit, it was fun at first. We visited various places that I hadn't been to in a while or had never been to before. We went to different restaurants, explored parks, and just enjoyed each other's company. It felt refreshing to have someone new to hang out with, someone who made me laugh and forget about the tensions at home. Ray was charming, and our outings became a regular thing. It was innocent, or at least that's what I convinced myself of at the time. Ray and I continued to hang out more frequently, and our friendship got even deeper. Looking back, I felt relieved that I hadn't shared my location with my husband. It had been another point of argument between us. My husband was open about sharing his location with me, but I had strongly refused to reciprocate. I argued that it felt controlling and invasive, and I didn't want him monitoring my every move. He nagged me about it for a while and kept saying that it was about trust and safety, but I stood my ground. Eventually, my husband relented, seeing that I wouldn't budge on the matter. Little did he know that this decision would play a significant role in what was to come. It gave me the freedom to move around without constant watching or the fear of being watched. It also allowed me to maintain my friendship with Ray without raising suspicions at home. At that time, I saw it as asserting my independence and privacy, not realizing the consequences it would bring later on. After a while of spending time together, Ray began suggesting that I come over to his house. Initially, I trusted him enough to agree. Our hangouts at his place started off innocently enough. just like any two friends hanging out. We would watch movies, try out recipes from TikTok, engage in conversations, and simply enjoy each other's company. But as time went on, things just kind of shifted. We started flirting more, and I couldn't help but notice how attractive Ray was. By this point, I had already distanced myself emotionally from my husband. The connection I felt with Ray, coupled with the growing distance in my marriage, made me feel lonelier and more drawn to Ray. Eventually, one day, things went too far and we ended up sleeping together. Ironically, we were watching a movie then. It was a bit cold, so we were cuddling, we started making out, and then it progressed to sex right there. That was the moment when everything changed, the point of no return. I had crossed a line. That was when I betrayed my husband's trust and my own values. Of course, after we were done and the sexual tension had died down, I went through all kinds of emotions, all mixes of emotions, and some I couldn't quite make sense of. On one hand, I was shocked by what had happened. I was scared that my husband would find out and devastated at the thought of losing my marriage. Guilt also weighed heavily on me, and I struggled with the consequences of my actions and the need to come clean about what had transpired. On the other hand, there was this sense of relief because it had been so long since I felt desired and wanted. It also felt thrilling since things with my husband were kind of boring and distant. But along with that thrill came a heavy dose of guilt and fear. I knew what I did was wrong, and I felt like I was betraying my husband in the worst way possible. It ate away at me, and I started to question every decision I had ever made leading up to that moment. Despite enjoying the experience with Ray, I knew deep down that I couldn't continue down that path. I tried to distance myself from him, to cut off all contact and pretend like it never happened. But just the mere memory of that day kept tempting me badly and wanting me to talk to Ray again. At the same time, I couldn't bring myself to confess to my husband. The thought of losing everything we had built together was too much to bear, so I buried my guilt and tried to carry on as if nothing had changed. After cutting Ray out of my life, things got real lonely real quick. I mean, he was like the highlight of my day, the one thing that made life a bit less dull. Without him, it was just me and my thoughts, which weren't exactly sunshine and rainbows. Plus, my influencer gig was going downhill faster than a sled on ice. I just couldn't muster up the energy or excitement for it anymore. It was like my dream was slipping through my fingers and I didn't have a clue how to grab it back. So I caved. I sent Ray a message, swallowing my pride and apologizing for ghosting him. And you know what? He was surprisingly cool about it, forgave me like it was no big deal. Next thing I knew, we were back to chatting like old buddies, filling up the gaps in each other's lives. But deep down, I knew this wasn't a good move. It was like stepping back into a minefield, knowing there were risks, but doing it anyway because, well, I guess I craved the familiarity and the distraction. Ray's words were like music to my ears, easing my guilt and making me feel like I wasn't the one to blame. He'd say things like, "Your husband drove you to this," or "You deserve to be happy no matter what." It was like he had a playbook on how to manipulate emotions, and I fell for it, hook, line, and sinker. He kept reassuring me that our affair would remain a secret, that my husband would never find out. He'd say, "We'll have our own little world, just you and me." He made it sound like some romantic adventure rather than a destructive path. I must admit, Ray had a way with words. He knew exactly what buttons to push, how to make me feel desired and wanted. It was like he could talk down a monkey from a tree, as my grandma would say. He spun stories that made me forget my reality, and he drew me deeper into his web of deceit. Before I knew it, we were having a full-blown affair, sneaking around and hiding our tracks. It felt thrilling, like a forbidden adventure, but deep down, I knew it was a mistake. As time went on, my affair with Ray became more and more consuming. It felt like I was on a roller coaster I couldn't get off, a wild ride of emotions that I couldn't control. Sometimes I'd feel guilty, but the excitement and attention from Ray drowned out all those feelings. I wasn't fully there for my husband anymore. No matter how much he tried to bridge the gap between us, it seemed like an impossible task. Ray had become a constant in my life, and he filled all the voids I didn't even know were there. It was as if he had taken over my thoughts and he had replaced my husband in every way except financially. My husband noticed the change. He tried to talk to me about it, but I just brushed him off. I was in deep denial, refusing to see how much our marriage was suffering. When he suggested counseling, I shot it down, insisting that we didn't need it. I didn't realize how much my husband was hurting and confused by my behavior. It was like we were strangers living under the same roof, not really connecting. I was so wrapped up in my affair that I couldn't see the damage it was causing to our relationship. My affair with Ray continued and became an everyday thing. I found myself spending almost every day at his place. It became a regular thing, like a routine I couldn't break. This shift in my behavior didn't escape my husband's notice. One day, my husband confronted me about my lack of drive and productivity. He saw that I wasn't uploading videos anymore and wanted to know what I was doing with my time. I gave him a vague answer, saying I was done with my influencer dreams and just wanted to be a stay-at-home wife. It was a half-truth meant to deflect his concerns and avoid the real issue. But my husband wasn't buying it. He insisted I find a job, which really ticked me off. It felt like he was suddenly changing the rules, ignoring how he'd been okay with handling the bills until then. This disagreement added more strain to our already rocky relationship, and it pushed me even closer to Ray. During this chaotic time, Ray faced eviction. He turned to me for financial help and asked me to cover his rent. The amount was too big to hide from me and my husband's shared account without raising suspicion. I couldn't risk exposing my affair, so I had to refuse. Ray had no choice but to move back in with his parents. Ray moving back in with his parents was a real downer. He wasn't thrilled, and neither was I. His parents were strict about guests, especially female ones, so that meant we had to shift our meetups to my place. It wasn't a big deal for me initially, since my husband's work kept him away most of the day. When Ray started coming over, he loved the change. Our house felt like an upgrade from his cramped spot. Our house was bigger and cozier than his place, so he enjoyed hanging out here, and he enjoyed the change of scenery. We spent whole days together, almost like a married couple. It felt like our own secret hideaway from the world. But it wasn't all smooth sailing. My husband's schedule was predictable, but there were occasions when he'd surprise me with an early return. He'd shoot me a text only when he was near home, assuming I was there. This often left Ray scrambling to make a swift exit, avoiding any potential awkward encounters. The day everything unraveled was one I never saw coming. I always assumed my husband was clueless, oblivious to the affair that was happening right under his nose. Ray and I would even joke about it, laughing at how blind my husband seemed to be. That day started like any other. Ray came over and we spent time together like we always did. We were intimate, had some food, and were just relaxing. Then out of the blue, nature called, and I headed to the bathroom. It was a mundane moment until I heard the unmistakable sound of my husband's car in the driveway. It was a loud car and had a distinct sound. You could not mistake it for another. Panic started to surge through me. I rushed back, urging Ray to leave immediately. I didn't care how. I just needed him gone before my husband walked in. But what I saw shocked me to my core. Ray had wet himself and was dialing 911 in a state of panic. I was stunned. How could he fall apart like this? Before we could even process what was happening, my husband burst into the house and caught us right in the middle of that chaotic scene. Ray looked terrified, which really surprised me. My husband was a big, strong guy, but Ray wasn't exactly small either. At that moment, though, I was more focused on damage control. I desperately tried to explain myself to my husband. I was stumbling over my words as I tried to make sense of the mess we were in. My husband, however, pushed past me and immediately rushed for Ray. He started punching him, and all Ray could do was scream. I wanted to pull my husband off Ray, but I was scared. I had never seen my husband violent before, and it was a shock to me. My husband beat Ray for a solid goat minutes before he finally left him. Then he dragged Ray by his hands and told me to follow him. I cried uncontrollably. I begged and pleaded with my husband. I was desperately trying to make him see that Ray was just a mistake, that I still loved him deeply, and that I didn't want to lose everything we had built together. But my husband's rage was clear in his eyes and his voice, and he didn't even spare me a glance. He just rushed right into our room and started packing my clothes into a luggage. He didn't listen to my pleas. Instead, he ordered me to leave with Ray. His tone was filled with so much anger and disappointment. It felt like my whole world was crumbling around me as I just watched him pack my clothes into a luggage. I kept trying to stop him, but he was too strong. I also kept trying to reason with him, but it was like talking to a wall. In a moment of desperation, my husband warned me that if I didn't leave immediately, I would face the same wrath he had just unleashed on Ray. Fear immediately gripped me, and I knew I had to leave, even though it tore me apart inside. My husband slammed the door shut and locked it tight the moment I was out the door, leaving me standing outside feeling like the biggest screw-up. I kept on knocking and begging him to open up so we could fix things somehow, but he didn't respond anymore. I tried to follow Ray because I had nowhere to go, but his harsh words stopped me in my tracks. He put all the blame on me, making it clear that I messed everything up. His anger made me realize what I had done. I was now homeless. He then said he should have never made that stupid bet, which puzzled me because I didn't know what bet he was talking about. But there was no time to figure it out or ask him as he went to his car and left almost immediately. I had nowhere to go after that disaster. My parents were out of the question. We'd never been on good terms. College was my ticket out of their drama. They'd probably laugh if they knew what happened. So I had to turn to old friends. Most shut me out until one finally took me in. She used to be my best friend, and I think guilt got to her. She said I could crash for a week, and at that moment I was just grateful for a roof over my head. She even offered to help me talk to my husband, which meant a lot. It's been rough these past few days trying to figure out how I messed up so badly. Any advice, Reddit? Update. Hey Reddit, the hate here is intense. The comments and DMs have been brutal. I know I messed up, I'm not trying to dodge that. Please, if you don't have anything constructive to say, spare me the hate. Surprisingly, I kind of like being here, hate and all. So let's get to the updates. Now for some updates. My friend managed to talk to my husband, and what I found out left me speechless. My husband is not willing to forgive me. He feels utterly humiliated and betrayed. But here's the kicker. Ray, the guy I cheated with, works with my husband. He's actually a junior under my husband. And apparently he made a bet with someone that he could sleep with me. Yeah, I know, it sounds insane. My husband wasn't even part of this bet. He just found out about it and pieced together why I've been so distant lately. He suspected something was off for about a week before catching us in the act. It's surprising, isn't it? I mean, considering what happened between Ray and my husband, you'd think there would be legal repercussions, like I genuinely thought Ray would at least press charges. But then I realized Ray is under my husband's authority at work. It's a tangled mess, and I wish I had never crossed paths with Ray in the first place. Also, now knowing this, I strangely feel a mix of emotions. On one hand, it's a relief in a twisted way because Ray is likely going to face serious consequences at work. My husband won't take this lightly. Ray has blocked me and refuses to communicate. Initially, he asked me to cover his medical bills after the beating my husband gave him, and I refused, and instead I expressed a desire to talk and sort things out. He cut me off completely. Just needed to get this off my chest. Update. Hey Reddit, I know I haven't been around much lately, and I apologize for that. But let's be real, life's been hitting me hard. I'm in a tough spot financially. I'm broke, jobless, and feeling the weight of it all. I haven't worked in ages, and it's starting to take a toll. My friend has been kind enough to let me crash at her place, but even that's got a time limit. She's giving me another week, out of pity, I guess. And then it's either pay up or pack up. It's been 2 weeks already, and I can't blame her for wanting to set some boundaries. I'm frantically looking for a job. The urgency is real now. Meanwhile, things on the personal front are a mess. My parents found out about everything, and they're not exactly being supportive. They're airing it out on Facebook, taking shots at me left and right. It's humiliating, to say the least. So yeah, sorry if I'm not updating as often as before. I've got to get my life together, like yesterday. I promise to update once the divorce dust settles if my husband doesn't forgive me. Just to give you all closure, then I'll be out of your hair for good. Update. Hey Reddit, I know it's been a while since my last update, and I'm sorry for the delay. The hate is still strong, huh? Well, I guess that's one consistent thing in my life right now. Anyway, let me fill you in on what's been happening. It's been a bit of time, days, weeks. I honestly lost track since I last updated. My friend and I decided to make a last-ditch effort to see if my husband would forgive me. We showed up at his workplace, hoping for a miracle. At first, he was adamant about not wanting to talk to us. Understandable, given the circumstances. But eventually, he let us into his office. It was a somber and heartbreaking conversation. I could see the hurt in his eyes, and it hit me hard how much I had lost. My husband mentioned how embarrassing it was for him to hear that his wife was cheating from another employee. He admitted that he had noticed my strange behavior, but had chalked it up to my work as an influencer, not realizing the truth of my infidelity. He talked about the deep pain I had caused him and expressed that forgiveness wasn't something he could offer. That sealed it. We're definitely headed for divorce. It's a tough reality to accept, but I guess it's the path we're on now. Update. Hey Reddit, just a quick mini update here. I have a job interview coming up, so fingers crossed. It's been a struggle trying to find work, but I'm hopeful about this opportunity. And on another note, I found out that Ray was fired from his job. I have mixed feelings about it, but part of me feels relieved. It's a small comfort knowing that I'm not the only one facing consequences for what happened. It wouldn't have been fair if I were the sole person punished by karma for our affair. After all, I was married, and he still chose to pursue me. I also want to give a shout out to my friend. She's been an absolute rock throughout all of this, going above and beyond what any family member would do for me. I appreciate her more than words can express. Update. Hey Reddit, I'm feeling really exhausted today. The messages I've been receiving from my husband's family are beyond hurtful. They're blaming me, calling me ungrateful, and wishing terrible things upon me. It's been overwhelming to say the least, and I know I messed up and I take full responsibility for my actions. But at this point, I just wish for some understanding and forgiveness. The hate and blame I'm receiving from all sides, even here on Reddit, is incredibly draining. Seeing my posts being shared and criticized adds to the weight of this already horrible situation. I'm just tired, both mentally and emotionally. I'm trying to navigate through this storm, but it feels like I'm constantly drowning in negativity. Update. Hey Reddit, I wanted to update you all on my job interview. Unfortunately, I didn't get the position. It's been tough dealing with the rejection, especially because I explained my situation about being a stay-at-home mom for years. They just couldn't see past my lack of recent work experience, but you know what? I'm not giving up. I'll keep applying for other jobs, and hopefully something will work out soon. In the meantime, I'm still waiting for the divorce proceedings to finalize. It's a sensitive topic, so I can't go into too much detail right now. Reflecting on everything, it's surreal how quickly things can change. One day I had a marriage, a family, and the next it all crumbled due to my own actions. I carry immense regret for the choices I made and the pain I caused. Update. Hey Reddit, another mini update here. Honestly, I keep on dropping all these mini updates here and they keep on piling up, but I just love updating you guys on what's going on. Now lately, it's like I've stumbled into a digital minefield lately. My friend pointed out that someone might have put up my contact details for newsletters and stuff, and it seems she's right. I've been bombarded with a ton of emails lately, most of them unrelated stuff that I never signed up for. It's gotten so bad that I can hardly sift through my inbox for important things like job interviews. And it doesn't stop there. I'm getting flooded with calls, messages, and texts from people who seem to think I'm Harry Styles from One Direction. Apparently, my number was posted in some One Direction fan forum. It's a bizarre mix of annoyance and confusion. My friend thinks it's just someone playing a prank, but honestly, it's beyond annoying at this point. I know my husband isn't the type to pull childish stunts like this, so I'm left wondering who could be behind this mess. Could it be Ray seeking some twisted form of revenge? Or maybe it's one of my husband's family members acting out in frustration. It's a very frustrating puzzle for me with no clear answers. I feel like just creating a new email or changing my phone number, but I don't feel very happy to do that. It's frustrating, tiring, and frankly, it's starting to feel like a digital invasion of privacy. I just wish I could catch a break and figure out who's behind all this mess. Update. It's been a while since I last checked in, and I'm sorry for the delay. Life hasn't exactly been a walk in the park lately. I've been dealing with a lot of depression since everything went down with my husband. It's been a real eye-opener to the harsh realities of life, and it's been tough. As for Ray, well, he's still MIA. No contact, no attempts at reconciliation. Honestly, at this point, I've given up on that front. It's time to move on. So here's the update on the legal front. We went through the whole court process, and it wasn't easy. I did manage to secure alimony, which has been a lifeline for me in terms of paying rent to my friend. It's been a struggle finding a job, though. Apparently, my lack of experience is a big red flag for employers. I'm considering taking up a minimum wage job just to get by because landing a decent job seems like an uphill battle. On the personal side, I'm officially divorced now. The alimony was pretty much the only thing I walked away with. No house, no savings, and thankfully, no debts to split. We didn't have kids, so there were no messy custody battles or child support issues. Life post-divorce has been rough. I miss my husband terribly, and it's been a constant battle with depression. I just needed to get this off my chest, especially since this will be my last update here. It's comforting in a strange way to see that the hate from some quarters hasn't waned. It's like a constant in my ever-changing life. Well, that's it from me. Goodbye, Reddit. Sometimes we find ourselves falling in love and being committed to people who do not have a mutual feeling towards us. No matter how hard you tried to show them the true meaning of love, they preferred looking for it outside their marriage, breaking the vows they had made in front of their families, friends, and God himself. It gets even worse when they get into marriage knowing very well that they were not ready for the commitments. Some break their vows just because they were seeking for fun outside their marriage. What do you call that? You know, I had thought I had chosen well. I thought I had found the one, only to find out that I had been a fool for the longest time. I was deceived by the person that I had given myself to. She was not ready for the commitment like I was. She should have said something, she should have told me that she was not ready not to lead me on. These are the things that cause us depression as men. Does anyone know the feeling or a glimpse of what I was going through? If there is, how did you deal with it? I, male 44, am naturally a quiet and reserved guy. I respected my peace, which was why you wouldn't find or see me arguing most of the time. I try by all means to keep and maintain the peace around the environment I am in. So my ex-wife and I met a while back when I was on a business trip to another city. She was working at the company that is owned by my biggest client who I was going to be meeting with. Mary, my wife, female 42, was Mr. Pistorius's personal assistant, fake identity due to personal reasons. So we dated for a year and a half, then I proposed to her on her birthday. My sister knew something deep about Mary, but she wouldn't tell me because I had seen how she reacted when I announced my engagement with Mary. She was somehow angry and kind of disappointed in me. Her words were, "After your divorce with Anna and going back to being a busy business person, I had thought you would come back a better person and choose well not the second season of what you married the last time." I didn't understand any of the things she had said because I had thought Anna got tired of waiting and found another man who would give her enough time and attention that I had failed to do. How was my situation with Anna connected to my engagement with Mary? I think my sister was kind of bitter and jealous because she was going through a breakup with the father of her children. There was a lot that my sister was hiding from me, but I knew that whatever happened in the dark would always find its way to come out to light. Mary and I got married after 6 months. I wanted to marry a month after I had proposed to her, but she wanted to first look for her father's family members so they would be present in the wedding. I didn't understand why she was so interested in finding her father's family members, because if they had wanted to be present in her life, they would have, and it wouldn't be hard for them to attend the wedding. But what woman wants? She should get to keep her happy. I helped her look for her father's family, and to my surprise, they were not far from our hometown. They just didn't want to be present in her life because even her father was alive and healthy. I was not surprised when the family she had spent the whole 6 months looking for did not come to the wedding. The wedding continued, though, and we had the best moment of our lives. I was happy that I had gotten a chance to spend my life with the woman my heart had chosen. I wished my mother was present to witness my happy ending. Not knowing that my happy ending would actually end sooner than I had expected, and my heart had chosen the worst breaker of it. Sometimes I don't understand why our hearts choose the wrong people to guide them, because I had given my heart to Mary, and she used it and stomped on it like a useless piece of paper. We got married when she was 25 and I was 27. I knew that that was the perfect age to get married to the love of your life. I mean, with Anna, I was still young and I was still trying to find my feet after I was fresh out of college. So it was understandable that would do something like what she did. A couple of months into our marriage, I had been trying to get Mary pregnant. We were not using any protection because as much as she was a body seller, she made sure to protect herself. Her words, not mine. And we had gone to the health department to check if we were both okay, and everything came back negative. That was when we started going raw. So I kept trying and trying to make her fall pregnant, but nothing was happening, which made me suspicious because if everything was fine with her, she would have gotten pregnant the time we tried for her baby. My mind kept telling me that she was hiding something. I didn't know what, but whatever it was sinister. But I trusted that she would never make me a fool, at least not like that. When I asked her why she was not falling pregnant because it had been months since we had started trying, she would always avoid the question and change the topic. The matter got worse when I had suggested that we went to the doctor to check efficiently if she was really fine, but she just busted and wanted to bite my head off. I then knew that something was smelling fish in her actions, but I couldn't tell her that. So I backed off, as much as I wanted a child to grow my family name and my legacy, but it was her body after all, and I had to respect her and her decisions. That time we were still living at home with my family. We decided to take her late sister's child and her grandmother to live with us because they wouldn't be able to take care of themselves or even live alone. Well, more like I came up with that idea. She was a bit skeptical at first, but she eventually agreed after she had thought about her family's well-being, and I needed my wife next to me at all times. The business was going pretty well, and Mary was still doing great in her kitchen department. The fast food business was growing because we had opened another spot outside our hometown. She had resigned from her previous job when we started dating because she had to move and stay with me, even though it was a process trying to convince her to move with me because of her grandmother and niece. I ended up hiring a person who would be staying with the niece and the grandmother. I was so proud of the woman she had become, I fell in love with her every single day. She kept me sane, and her communication progress was fully accomplished. Well, not fully, but she was getting there. One summer afternoon, we had decided to go out as a family. Well, more like taking Grandma and the niece out for some fresh air. They were visiting at my house. I wanted my sister and brother to tag along also, but my sister's bitterness was really on another level, and she didn't even try to hide it, and my brother was always on the streets as usual. I wished my family was still intact, just like how it was when my mother was still alive. Yes, my brother was always on streets, but he was always available when it was time to spend with the family. My own family had fallen apart, and it really hurt me, because I needed them. So I went out with my wife's family. We had a lot of fun. She was happy, and so was her niece and grandmother. That was all I had wanted to see on her face. Happiness and freedom. Her smile was my priority. And another thing, she had started attending college because she wanted to get a qualification in cooking, so she had sold their old home to pay for her fees. I supported her in her dreams. She made me proud to be her man and to call her my wife. I just don't know what went wrong, but something went wrong and ruined everything. She was doing a very good job in maintaining our family, plus school and fast food business. As much as we had hired 2 people that would be hands-on in the kitchen department when she was at school, but she made sure that whenever she got time, she was taking charges. She loved to be in charge, and she was dedicated to everything she did. A couple of months later, her grandmother passed on in her sleep. None of us knew what had happened that had led to her passing. My wife was devastated. She was really hurt. She had shut me out to a point that she eventually went back to the Mary she was. She distanced herself even from her niece, so I had to take charge and take care of everything, including her niece and business. She grieved the wrong way, but I made sure to be there for her during the whole grieving period she was going through. I couldn't get through to her. It was like she had a demon or she was possessed, and that possession led her to making bad decisions. I was only relieved that she didn't lose herself to a point that she went back to selling her body. I mean, we had money, so she didn't need to do that. Her grandmother's passing really hurt her and her niece because the niece also started getting sick. Mind you, Mary was wherever the place that she was in, so I had to take responsibility for her niece's health and make sure she got better treatment. It was really hard on me also because the niece couldn't bathe herself since she was disabled, so I had to do that. It was uncomfortable, I tell you, but I had to do what the best husband had to do. The time went by and I saw that Mary was not getting over the grief period, so one day when she came back home intoxicated to a point that she couldn't even remember her name. So I called the rehabilitation facility that was around our hometown and admitted her to the facility. I had to do something right. I missed my wife. I was also not able to cope with all the responsibilities I had. By God's grace, I had managed to fix things with my sister, even though she was still not telling what her problem was with Mary, but I was glad that I had gotten my sister back. She helped me a lot, especially with my niece. She was truly helpful. And my brother was slowly becoming available at home, which was another thing I was happy about. 6 months later, Mary got discharged from the facility. I was happy about the improvement she had made. She became the person I fell in love with, the day I saw her in Mr. Pistorius's office. She was doing way better than I had imagined. Even though her niece was happy to see her, my heart was full and complete. I mean, I had everything, my family, my wife, everything was just great, you know. Little did I know that a cheater never changes its spots, right? I was so much in love and comfortable to even think of what would happen in the future. So at the restaurant, I had hired an old friend of mine that I had grown up with to manage it during the time when I was home taking care of my niece. He was doing a very good job and the business was booming. The money was coming in and I had nothing to worry about. A year later, or let me say 9 months later, I bought a bigger house not far from home because my wife was complaining about her peace and privacy. Her and my sister were not getting along, and it affected me somehow because I wanted my sister to get along with my wife, but on my side, that was not the case. It was like they were cat and dog. They were always arguing. So I decided to investigate the issue my sister had with my wife. My conscience kept telling me that whatever it was really dark and deep. I couldn't shake off the feeling that either my wife or sister once did something to someone else. I knew that my sister would never just hate someone without a valid reason, and their issue was not solvable. There was really no solution to it. So my solution was to find the root of the problem. During my investigation and findings, I found out that my wife was actually in a paid relationship. Or must I say she had a transactional regular client, which kept buying whatever service she was offering. And that person turned out to be my sister's baby daddy. Unfortunately, my sister found out and she was livid because whatever that it was had happened when my sister was pregnant. I remember very well that my sister was always in and out of hospital because of pregnancy complications due to the stress she was caused by her then boyfriend. I couldn't believe it, you know. I had blamed my sister for being bitter and thought she was jealous of my relationship because hers didn't work out, not knowing that my wife was actually the cause of all this. Well, not really my wife because she didn't ask the boyfriend to come for her service, but he did it willingly. So both of them were victims in the situation. Time went on, my sister started warning me about Mary, saying that she had heard that Mary was timing me. I was like, here we go again. I didn't know what the problem was with my sister really. Yes, my wife had done wrong by her, but she had no reason to hate her because she didn't know that the client that had approached her was actually my crazy sister's unfaithful and selfish baby daddy. It had been a couple of months since we had moved into our new house. My sister was not happy about that as usual. She had thought I was choosing my wife over her after what my wife had done to her. But that was not the case. I had chosen peace, and I was fed up hearing them barking at each other every day. Their arguments made me do something I had never thought I would have done to my sister. I slapped her and defended my wife because she was starting to be a nuisance, not knowing that I was making the biggest mistake of my life. So one day I received a call from my sister asking me to come home. She wanted to discuss something with me. So I drove home and found my sister along with one of the guys that were working at my restaurant. I was confused about what was going on. In my mind, I had thought they were going to tell me that they were dating maybe. My sister then started telling me that she wanted to show me something, so I gave her a go-ahead. The guy took out his phone and told me to scroll on the pictures he was showing me. I was still confused about why they would call me to show me the pictures of my wife in the restaurant. As I continued scrolling, one picture caught my attention. It was my wife looking cozy with the restaurant manager. They were sitting too close to each other. Even a child would have seen that something was going on between the two. So I decided to take this guy with me because I was going to the restaurant since I was already around the neighborhood. When I got there, some of my trusted workers were not there. So I asked the guy where others were, and he told me that the manager had fired them. I was surprised and angry that he had fired people I trusted, so I went straight to the manager's office. But before I got in, I overheard the manager and my wife talking. My wife was sitting on his lap. The manager kept nodding. I then heard my wife telling the manager that she wanted him and asked him to allow her to enjoy the night together. She even told him that they would disappear on the night of another branch launch. My mouth got dry in an instant as I was still eavesdropping. I heard the manager telling her that I was his childhood friend, so it was wrong of him to even agree to betray me. I didn't know why he was saying all that while he was busy chowing my wife. I trusted him, I trusted them, but both of them screwed me over. So I just decided to go back home without even asking the manager about the workers' issue. I was furious. I wanted to explode so bad because both of them had fooled me. Not to mention that I had called a wife. She had gone against her vows of being faithful and betrayed me. Not with a random person, but with the person I had considered a friend. Luckily, I had left the niece with my sister back at home. I couldn't allow her to see me angry. I was frustrated. I couldn't believe that I had been a fool the whole time. I wanted to find out when their affair had started, so I waited for my wife to come back home so I could go through her phone. Maybe I would find something tangible. A few hours later, she came back looking happy. I pretended that I was fine, as much as it was hard to pretend, but I had to, so that I would be able to gather evidence that she was really cheating. If I had asked her straight away, she would have denied it even though I had seen and heard them. That day, she didn't even kiss or hug me like she would do when she came from wherever she would be. That day, she went straight to the bathroom to take a shower, saying she was tired and she wanted to wash off the sweat she had. So when she was in the shower, I got a chance to take her phone. Luckily, I knew her passcode, so it was not a struggle to unlock it. What I found out when I paged her phone almost took me to an early grave. I couldn't believe it. The conversations they were having were mostly about me. She was degrading my capabilities as her man. She even told the guy that she was regretting marrying me because I was a boring guy and not sexually satisfying her. I was hurt beyond measure because I had thought everything was going well and our intimate moments were good. She never told me anything about her not being satisfied. As I continued going through their conversations, I found out that they once had a transactional relationship before. Surely that was when she was still selling her body. So she sold herself to the person I had been calling a friend and a brother for all the days of my life. Who are women, huh? Why are they so evil and venomous? These female species would really murder you and bury your body outside the yard, then live their lives like they had done nothing. But I couldn't allow her to just fool me like that and think I would not stay back and eat popcorn with her. The fact that they were even sharing their private pictures reeked me to the core. I hate people who treat other people as fools and think they could get away with everything. I forwarded the conversations and the pictures to my emails. I couldn't risk forwarding them to my phone because she would sometimes use it. Weeks later, I got tired of pretending, so I called our family lawyer and asked her to draft me divorce papers. Luckily, we were not married into any joint commune, so she would get anything that I had worked hard for. The only person who I thought about was the niece because she was going to be in the middle of everything. But I couldn't let them go free after they had made me a fool. So I had created a fake email account the day before, so I went to the restaurant to check how things were. When I got there, the manager asked him to check his emails. The look he had on his face was priceless. I then cut off our friendship since he had broken the bro code. I told him to forward them to the wife. So the day of the launch came. I think the restaurant's former manager didn't forward her the things I had sent to him. Everything went well and the party started. I was never one for parties. The loud music, the crowded rooms, the forced conversations with strangers, it all made me incredibly uncomfortable. But because it was Mary's big day and I had to pretend like we were okay in front of people, it was truly a hard thing to do. Having to pretend was not really my thing, to be honest. The bass thumped through the walls, the air thick with sweat and alcohol. I stuck close to Mary, feeling out of place and awkward, but she seemed to be having a great time, laughing and chatting with anyone who would listen. Yes, I was angry at her for what she did with my so-called childhood friend, but I had to be there for her, just as I had promised that I would always be there, and besides, I didn't want people asking questions and starting making their own assumptions. As the night wore on, I noticed Mary getting more and more flirtatious with a tall, handsome man named James. James was actually my business competitor, but Mary didn't know that. They seemed to have an instant connection, and I couldn't help but feel a twinge of jealousy. I tried to shrug it off, knowing that Mary was just a naturally outgoing person. But then things took a turn for the worse. I watched in horror as Mary led James into a darkened room that was in the far corner of the restaurant, a mischievous smile playing on her lips. She told me to follow them, and Mary told me to watch and learn. I didn't understand the meaning of what she was doing at first, but it really angered me when I discovered it. She bluntly told me that she wanted me to watch her getting pumped by another man. She even finished her statement by, "Maybe you will take notes and see how it's done." You know when you suddenly feel like your whole body is burning and your head is about to explode because of the rage that was brewing inside me. I was feeling my whole body shaking, not because of heartbreak, but because of rage. How could she disrespect me to that level in front of my enemy? She had no shame and self-respect. The thought of watching the woman I loved be intimate with another man filled me with a white-hot rage that I had never experienced before. I stormed off the porch, my heart pounding in my chest. How could she even suggest something like that? Was our marriage not enough for her? Did she not love me anymore? I found myself at a bar, drowning my thoughts in a sea of alcohol. The anger and confusion swirled around in my head, clouding my judgment and making it impossible to think clearly. As I stumbled home, the front door swung open and I was faced with a sight that I never in a million years thought I would see. There they were, tangled together on the living room floor. Mary and my sworn enemy, their bodies moving in a way that made my blood boil. I felt a surge of rage unlike anything I had ever felt before. How could she do this to me? How could she betray our marriage in such a blatant and disrespectful way? Yes, I was willing to forget about what she did with John, the restaurant's former manager. But after what I saw, there was no chance of us surviving. I stormed into the room, my fists clenched at my sides. I could see that they saw me, but they still continued. James was growling like a slaughtered animal, and Mary was busy enjoying every moment. I felt disrespected in my own house. The worst part was that my wife was being pumped by my enemy. In my house, imagine. I unleashed all of my anger on them, screaming and cursing like a madman. Every insult and accusation that had been building up inside me came pouring out in a torrent of emotion. I couldn't control myself. I found myself straggling Mary while she was still enjoying herself, until my siblings came in and begged me to stop. Mind you, that time I had even forgotten that they were coming to visit for the weekend. As I was still angry, I rushed to the tools room and took an electric cable. I went back to the living room and didn't ask any questions. I just whipped both of them. I didn't care that my siblings were there, but I had to do what I had to do. I wanted them to feel the pain that I was also feeling inside. I whipped them until I was sure that I was tired. Bear in mind, they were both still in their birth suit. The room was filled with the sound of my voice and their cries of shock and fear. I know that neither James nor Mary was aware of my enraged side. I felt a sick sense of satisfaction at the chaos I had caused, the control I had regained over a situation that had spiraled out of my grasp. But as the adrenaline began to fade, I saw the tears streaming down Sarah's face, and I just told myself that I wasn't done with her. But at the same time, I asked myself, what had I done? How had I let my anger get the better of me like that? I mean, I had unleashed my existing but invisible side of me in front of my enemy. I thought about my business and hoped that wouldn't affect it. I told James to get out of the house, and I was left with my siblings who were still in shock about what they had seen. After some time, I went to my office to check on the CCTV footage. Mary was so focused on James's Johnson to a point that she forgot that there were cameras around the house. So I watched the videos of them getting all kinky on each other. My blood boiled, so I created fake accounts on social media and posted the videos online. I was hurt, angry, disappointed, and impetuous. I wanted to destroy her life just like how she did with mine. She was selfish to infect me with her infection, and she thought I was not going to find out. The videos started trending, and I broke things off with her. My sister was really hurt because she had started warming up to her as someone in my life, but she disappointed her and did what she was best at. I told her to leave, and I was glad that she was earning her own money, so there was nothing that was going to connect me with her anymore. I hated her, and I still do. What she did was the most cruel thing a person could do to another person. She kept apologizing, but I was not going to forgive her. I vowed to myself that I would never get involved with a woman, not after what I had been through. I really thought Mary was different, but she was just like my previous wife. I was glad that my business didn't get affected, as I had taken action first and exposed James along with Mary. I don't know what happened to their businesses because I didn't care. I wanted to flush all the memories of Mary in my life because she was no longer a living factor to me. I made sure that she gets a taste of her own medicine when I reported the car that I had bought for her as a stolen good. Luckily, it was registered under my name. After the videos trended, I heard that James was actually a wanted suspect, so somehow the videos I linked helped the police department to catch him. Well, apparently James was not from here in the US. He had come here illegally because he had committed crimes in his country in Switzerland. I didn't understand how they couldn't catch James because he was a businessman, a known businessman at that. If they wanted to catch him, they would have easily. But they waited until I posted the video of him and Mary. I divorced Mary. The state wanted me to take 50% of all her assets, but I simply declined. I wanted nothing to do with Mary, so she might as well just enjoy her money and everything she owns. Yes, I helped her start everything until she gets where she is now, but I couldn't hold that against her. I wanted to close the whole Mary chapter in my life and start a new one in a clean slate. It wasn't easy, but it was worth it. That's what I would tell myself, even though it wasn't helping in any way, but it made a difference. They say everything happens for a reason, right? So what was the point of taking her things or half of her things just because we were married under a community of property? It didn't make any sense to me because I was also making my own money and I'm a very respectable and known businessman. I had opted to leave her the house that we were staying in since she had sold her grandmother's house to pay for her studies. It was the least I could have done. I was not thinking of her well-being, but her niece's. She started throwing shades at me on social media, causing drama and calling me names, not thinking what she was doing was not going to affect me in any way. She wrote about my weaknesses as a man on a public platform and shared with the whole world how much she regretted marrying a non-satisfying man like me. As much as those things bruised my man ego, but I didn't care much about any of them. She wanted to degrade me and my image, but she dismally failed because people were throwing sticks and stones on her comments, calling her all sorts of names. I was just that I was out of her life for good. As the months passed, I started to see glimpses of healing. The sharp edges of my pain began to soften, replaced by a sense of acceptance and understanding. I realized that my wife's infidelity was not a reflection of my worth, but rather a reflection of her own struggles and insecurities. I made the decision to forgive her, not for her sake, but for mine. Holding on to anger and resentment would only poison my own heart, preventing me from moving forward and finding peace. Moving on was a slow and arduous process. I had to rediscover who I was outside of my marriage, reconnecting with old hobbies and passions that had long been buried beneath the weight of my pain. I leaned on friends and family for support, finding comfort in their unwavering love and understanding. But through it all, I never lost sight of the most important lesson I had learned, that healing is a process, not a destination. It takes time and patience, self-reflection and self-compassion. And while the scars of my past may always remain, they serve as a reminder of the strength and resilience that lies within me. As I sit here now reflecting on the journey I have traveled, I am filled with a sense of peace and gratitude. I am grateful for the pain that forced me to confront my deepest fears and insecurities. I am grateful for the love and support that buoyed me in my darkest moments. And above all, I am grateful for the opportunity to start anew, to rebuild my life on a foundation of self-love and acceptance. So here I stand, a survivor of betrayal and heartbreak, a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. And as I look towards the future with hopeful eyes, I am reminded that the best is yet to come. Never, I mean never ever give or take all the love that your heart offers and give it to someone who is not your blood. That is one thing I got to learn the hard way. It was not easy accepting it, but life goes on, right, and it has to move on. It taught me that I should rather use like or love that person with my lever, not my heart, because once it breaks, it's not really easy to repair it. I don't know if I dealt with everything the right way, but it was satisfying for me. If there is anyone who once came across the same situation, what was your take? How did you deal with everything? But the leopard doesn't change its spots, so if I were to take her back, how sure would I know that she won't repeat what she had done, and how would I ever forget the betrayal she once did? I don't know if I had made a good decision for what I did, but I know that I did, and I am grateful to my siblings for the support that they gave me and the therapy. I had finally let go of the hatred that I had against Mary, but I still don't care about her anymore. On the other hand, my competitor was transported back to Switzerland and he was arrested for all the crimes that he had convicted. Right now, my life is a free and peaceful life. My only lover is my business. What are your opinions on everything? Please share them. I would like to know.